You've learned the bass notes of the left hand. You've learned the chords of the left hand. Let's learn the complete left hand for part A of Chopin's Waltz in A minor. Remember, when you play your low notes, make your hand into the shape of an octave. Even though you're not playing finger one, it will help you with your stability for your low notes. Always play your low notes in this piece with finger 5. Here is the first phrase of part A. You don't have to play with pedal yet. I'll talk about pedal later in this video. Here it is again. I'll play a little faster now. If you can't move to the chords that quickly, it's fine. You can practice moving to the chords with no steady beat, with no rhythm, and even with no sound. And it can help you learn how to move from one place to another with less stress. So there's phrase 1 of part A, positioned silently. Let's do a bricklayer method where we do one measure, then we do the second measure, and then we put the two measures together. Do it over and over again. Maybe 3 times until it starts to feel like it's getting into your brain a little. Once it becomes easy, you might feel the urge to speed up, and that is a good sign. Measure 2's like this. I'll do it silently for a second. In previous videos, you can see my reasons for the fingerings I use. Now try to do 2 measures in a row. You can expect this to be a little bit of a brain burner where it fills up your mind to where you have trouble thinking. Here's measure 3 by itself. Remember that for phrase 1, the chord of measure 3 has a third, because in phrase 2 we're going to have a chord that has a fifth. And in part B of the piece you're going to need to remember these as well, whether the chord has a third or a fifth. Whenever you have these 7th chords, it's all up for grabs. You could have a third, you could have a fifth, you could have both. And it depends on what the right hand melody is doing. Here's that 3rd measure again. And now 3 measures in a row. It's okay to play everything a little loudly. In the end, we will probably be trying to play our bass notes soft, and then our chords very, very soft. But you don't need to do that now if you don't have space to think about that. Here's measure 4. C major. All 4 phrases of this part A by Chopin do the same chord progression. They have A minor, D minor, G7, C major. Okay, now that you've learned the 4th measure of phrase 1, go ahead and put all 4 measures together. You can see that we're building up. We're adding a measure each time. If one of these measures feels a lot harder than the others, of course you should zoom in to just that measure and do it a little until you feel like you get the hang of it. And if one of these transitions is extra confusing, you shouldn't always start at measure 1. If the transition from D minor to G7 is harder, then you should zoom in and learn how to start in this strange place. Okay, you can start from the beginning if you need help learning how to start from the strange place, but it's great to learn how to start in the middle of a phrase. Here is measure 2 and 3 if you needed to work on that transition. Here's a demonstration. And again, just do these things maybe once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times to get the hang of it. Once you start to get the hang of it, notice whether you get things correct on the first try, because that first try is really what's going to matter the most in your performance. And please do not waste your time doing things X number of times in a row, an arbitrary number of times in a row, like 10 times in a row or 5 times in a row or 50 times in a row. Music performance never gives a guarantee, and even if you're in your practice room playing 10 times in a row correctly, it is no guarantee that you will be able to do it when you need to, and it is bad to have a false sense of security just because you have sacrificed your time at the shrine of endless repetition. Practice things once, twice, 3 times. If it's not working, you need to zoom in. If it is working, go on to a bigger challenge, like the next phrase. Here we are with phrase 2. The only difference with phrase 2 comes in the first measure and the fourth measure. The first measure doesn't have the low, low A. It has an A closer to bass C. To review, if you don't know the names of the different Cs, we have middle C, bass C, low C, and to go up we have middle C, treble C, high C. Here is phrase 2, measure 1 again. Because you already practiced measure 2 of this phrase, you might be able to tie them together pretty well. But if you can't, then of course you should zoom in on measure 2 before you put the 2 in a row. I promise that eventually I'll play with pedaling. With waltzes, once you get the hang of the notes and you are comfortable with pedaling, we're always going to be pedaling pretty much. So this third measure, I misspoke before. The third measure is also different than the third measure of phrase 1. I alluded to this. Make sure your edition has these notes in part A, phrase 2, measure 3. The budget edition I recommend, edited by Snell. It's a wonderful collection of repertoire, but some of the notes are wrong. And he doesn't have this fifth. I love that publisher. It's a great price and great collection and great quality of paper and the binding and everything. But watch out for this note if you're using the Snell repertoire book that I recommend with a reservation. Okay, so the third measure of phrase 2, third, fifth. So we have our third, fifth there. Let's do the 3 in a row now. Okay, you could pause and practice that until you get the hang of it. And gosh, I hope that this YouTube channel makes a couple more people in the world practice their positioning silently, because it just gives me a sense of relaxation and less struggle and makes me feel like I can make progress at piano without having to suffer so much. Let's go into the fourth measure. This is going to be another change where there's just one chord instead of the 2 chords that measure 4 of phrase 1 had. So there it is. That's the end of phrase 2. Chopin leaves out the second chord because the right hand, phrase 3, is going to start off with an E again. So he can't play the chord twice because the right hand finger 1's going to need that E key. Okay, so because measure 3 and 4 of phrase 2 is so much more dense in content, let's zoom in on that. Let's zoom in on that before we try the whole phrase 2. Here's phrase 2 complete. And you may notice that my fingers, it's extra obvious because my fingers are so long and thin, but my fingers are not afraid to slide beside the black keys. When you play your chords, please don't do that old-fashioned fingers must always be curved rule, because it's bad for the tension in your forearm and the tension in your wrist. So if you are opening your hand to a stretch like this one, let your fingers straighten out a lot and become comfortable sliding beside the black keys and between pairs of black keys. Okay, we are there with phrase 2. If your mind is not completely full and you're not feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, try to do everything that you've done so far. I'm feeling like this is turning into a long video, so I'll stop here in just a moment. Let's talk about pedaling. We traditionally use what's called syncopated pedaling whenever we play our waltz accompaniment pattern. The waltz accompaniment pattern has a low note on beat 1, and then it has chords on beat 2 and 3. Every time that you play the low note, you need to lift and lower your foot before your finger lets go of the low note, but you can't lift your foot before you play the low note. You have to lift your foot at the same time or very slightly after the low note in order to connect the sounds together. And you have to get your foot back down before you let go of the key. If you don't get your foot back down before you let go of the key, it would be where there would be a stop or a very partial, oops, and I had my foot up early. I'm doing it all the wrong way as a demonstration what to watch out for. You should have a continuous flow of sound that does not sound like you're underwater, but is a continuous flow of sound. If you never lift and lower your foot, you will have that underwater cacophonous feeling that all the piano teachers hate because most students love it. Spicy. So I played the G7 chord, and then when I played the C, it really was harsh because I was showing what not to do. So I'll play and I'll say lift and lower. I think I'll have to go really slowly because sometimes I say lift a little later than my foot actually does it. Here is how to pedal. It's quite sophisticated and complex. So take your time practicing it and go back to my Satie pedaling video if you need more help. Lower, lift, lower, lift, lower, lift, lower, lift, lower, lift, lower. I got tired of saying it, so I quit saying it. And I also realized whenever I said lower, sometimes my foot was already down. And like I've mentioned in other videos on pedaling, whenever you're pedaling, keep the ball of your foot or whatever part of your foot that you're pedaling with always in contact with the pedal. Don't let the pedal up super quickly and don't let go of the pedal with your foot, because then you might thunk against the wood of the pedal mechanism. And also, in order to lift your foot slowly enough and gently enough so that you don't do that thunk, pretend that the pedal mechanism and the tension in its spring is pushing your foot up, and just be very mindful of the lifting and lowering of your foot and the sound that you're creating, because pedaling in this syncopated way is one of the very most difficult things to get correct if you're not hiring a teacher to help you. So here's the sound of the first two phrases. I'll play with both hands now. I'll play with pedaling, just so if you feel like you're ready for more, you could try that at home. The next video will deal with phrase 3 and 4, the notes to those. Good luck with learning your left hand, and good luck adding pedal whenever you're ready. And please make phrase 2 correct and different than phrase 1, albeit very slightly different. Good luck.